Namaskar. This is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. The investigation by various authorities in the dubious and murky affairs of the ILFS group, which collapsed about 3 years ago, continues. A common feature in the findings of the investigation by every agency and authority so far, whether it be the SFIO, whether it be the CBI, the Enforcement Directorate, SEBI, or the Income Tax Department, the common feature in the investigations has been reports of scammy and fraudulent auditors and managements of the ILFS group, all consisting of big top-of-the-line names in their respective domains. The recent report that indicts its auditors and its management, because both of them work together in tandem, is that of the NFRA on the conduct of audit and on the conduct of the auditors. And this report is in the case of ITNL for the financial year 2017-18. The report of the NFRA on the misconduct and collusion of the ITNL auditor makes shocking and shameful reading, particularly because the auditor happens to be a part of the EY network, a leading member of the wanted Big Four quartet of the global multinational accounting firms. And EY's current business tagline or motto happens to be building a better working world. The fact is, this kind of conduct will not. Apart from IFIN, which is ILFS Financial Services, ITNL, which is ILFS Transportation Networks Limited, was the most important subsidiary and business arm of the ILFS group, which therefore played a prominent role in the giant frauds that were committed by the ILFS group. The last audited financial statements of ITNL before the group collapsed in September 2018 are those for the financial year 2017-18. And that's been the year of the present investigation under report by the NFRA, India's audit regulator. If you look at the annual report of ITNL for that year, it's a glossy, impressive, and very imposing document. To better understand the seriousness and gravity of the NFRA findings, let us therefore review the top 10 highlights of this splendid and imposing document, which has, of course, now been proven to be bogus. The highlights of the bogus annual report of ITNL for the financial year 2017-18 are something like this. The first one, the chairman of the company then, Shri Deepak Dasgupta, is a retired IAS officer, and so are two of its other directors, Shri R.C. Sinha and Mrs. Neeru Singh. The others include the criminal masterminds of the entire group scam, which is Ravi Parthasarathi, Hari Shankaran, and Arun Saha. The second highlight, the criteria for evaluating the much appreciated performance of its non-executive directors included ensuring the integrity of its financial controls and risks in the company and also upholding its statutory compliance and corporate governance. Facts show nothing like this happened. There was no integrity. The third highlight, its board of directors say that they have adopted a code of conduct which, among others, lays down various principles of ethics to be followed by its directors. Their entire conduct was found to be unethical. The business responsibility report of the company says that it conducts its business with ethics, transparency, and accountability, all of which were found to be missing. The top executives of the company happen to be highly qualified and experienced professionals who were paid huge remuneration. During that year, its managing director was paid a salary of 4.53 crores. Its executive director was paid rupees 3.21 crores. Its CFO's salary was rupees 2.45 crores, and that of its CEO was rupees 1.88 crores. Huge sums paid because they committed a huge scam. The next highlight, the company had a total of 72 subsidiaries and joint entities, most of which have incurred massive losses. The next, the company says that it believes in adhering to good governance practices and that it has complied with the requirements of good governance under the SEBI code. The subsequent events have proved it to be otherwise. Its auditors have been appointed for 5 years and that they have confirmed to the company that they are not disqualified from being appointed and continuing as the auditor of the company is the next point. And the NFRA finding says that that is not true. The secretarial report bears no adverse comment whatsoever, and so is the case with the auditor's report, which is clean, unqualified, and certifies the ITNL accounts to be true and fair. And finally, its financials. It had revenues of 9,779 crores, on which it got a measly profit after tax of 65 crores, and its net worth was rupees 4,361 crores. What appears on paper to be a highly ethical and transparent entity which claims to have complied with all the applicable provisions of the law and the applicable codes of conduct is completely not so. It is to the contrary. If you go by the findings of the NFRA, which were recently reported. And what were the findings of the NFRA? The NFRA first says that while the auditors of ITNL said that they were qualified to be appointed as and continue as the auditors of the company, the NFRA says that the very initial appointment of S.R. Bartley and Company, the EY firm, as the statutory auditor of ITNL in 2017, and its continuation as the auditor of the company thereafter was illegal. NFRA says that it was not even qualified to be appointed as its auditor, and yet this EY firm accepted this appointment. The second finding of NFRA, the company reported a profit after tax of 65 crores, whereas the NFRA says that its losses were grossly understated. Losses of 2,021 crores on account of trade receivables and loans to subsidiaries were just not recognized. Loans of 3,346 crores to subsidiaries and also investments therein, which had become loss-making and which needed to be impaired to recognize the losses, were not so recognized. And losses on account of financial guarantees of 2,654 crores given under the garb of letters of comfort were again not recognized. If these losses had been recognized, the entire net worth of the company would have been wiped out. So, if all these had been ethically and legally accounted for, as the company claims itself to be, then as we said, the company would have incurred a huge loss for the year, such that its entire net worth would have been wiped out. The financial statements of ITNL, as were approved by the auditor, thus did not represent the real picture. The next finding, with such a pathetic financial position, the auditor needed to adversely comment on the very likelihood of the existence of ITNL as a going concern, which it did not, and no wonder the company soon collapsed thereafter. The NFRA further says that the audit engagement partner failed to report in the financial statements the material misstatements, the material financial issues known to him, and he did not even exercise the required due diligence expected of an auditor in such grey matters. The NFRA says that the auditor failed to maintain audit documents as per the accounting standards. It then says that the auditor undertook and performed lucrative non-audit services in stark violation of the provisions of the Companies Act. And it finally says that the auditor violated the Institute of Chartered Accountants' mandatory code of ethics and code of conduct. These are extremely serious findings. That's the NFRA opinion on the company and its auditors, which incidentally claim that its management was ethical, transparent, and accountable. While we are always for ethics, transparency, and accountability of company directors and auditors, and we certainly have no prejudice against the big four audit firms, it is yet no surprise to us that if these auditors are willing to be accomplices and collusive with corporate managements in the conduct of fraud, scams, and manipulation of financial statements, then they are bound to be the auditor of choice for companies, as we see in this case and in many others. A report says that 75% of the listed companies in India by market capitalization are audited by this bunch of the big four. These kind of auditors who are willing to sign bogus, manipulated, and fraudulent financial statements in order to hide the crimes and malpractices of the management have been actually equally responsible for giant frauds, scams, and NPAs that have robbed India from time to time. That has been the reason why audit reports are often taken with a ton of salt today, and also why the government was forced to clip the wings of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India as the regulator of the audit profession in India, and it was forced to bring in the NFRA. The unfortunate reality has been that the bigger the fraud, the bigger and more resourceful has been the indicted auditor, and the more has been its capacity to engage the biggest of lawyers and defeat the apparent findings of authorities like the NFRA in a court of law. While soul searching and cleanup of the profession is badly needed, yet the response of SR Batliba and Company, the ITNL auditor now in the docks, was on very expected lines. The auditor says that it did nothing wrong and that it performed the audit as per the applicable accounting standards, and that it is disappointed with the very findings of the NFRA. Such an indifferent response, unfortunately, does little to restore the credibility and trust in the profession today. It is extremely important to restore the trust of the various stakeholders in the audit profession. But when these kind of instances come and when auditors respond in this manner, then we know for sure why the trust was lost in the first place. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.